As we put a wrap on 2012, new information on a series of investigations that continue to make news throughout the year, beginning with a financially troubled fire district in Coventry. Taxpayers were lined up out the door in the auditorium at Coventry High School last week, where court-appointed receiver Richard Land painted a grim picture of the district's financial condition. And Land had this bombshell: that several years ago, district officials overestimated by $700,000 expected tax revenue, and they repeated the mistake for 2 more years, largely accounting for a $2 million deficit. Land also said the district's practice of charging commercial properties at a higher rate than residential property is illegal, meaning homeowners will be facing a significant tax increase when they gather next month to consider a budget. That is, unless they decide to pursue dissolving the 5-year-old district altogether. More than a year ago, we first sounded the alarm on a taxpayer-funded loan program in Providence with an exorbitant default rate. Well, it's become so bad that the federal agency providing the money has moved in to clean up the mess. The Department of Housing and Urban Development met last month with city officials to review the loan portfolio and practices of the Providence Economic Development Partnership. By mutual agreement, the city will stop issuing new federally funded business loans until HUD can straighten out a mess that has been years in the making. HUD's picking up the $375,000 tab to do the review, meaning federal taxpayers are on the hook for Providence's mistakes. The 3 wind turbines along the Providence waterfront sat motionless for the better part of 2012. Well, in late October, they finally began spinning, and we were there when it happened. Many wondered if it would ever happen, but on October 24th, it finally did. The first of 3 turbines started spinning as employees of the Narragansett Bay Commission and the crews that installed the windmills looked on. Since then, all 3 have begun generating power that will pay off the $12 million project over the next decade. The electricity will power much of the plant, and any excess will be sold back to National Grid. Our story on sex offenders living too close to schools last spring prompted a flurry of legal activity, including the ACLU, which jumped in on behalf of the sex offenders. But the ACLU lost its first round in court last month. A Superior Court judge ruled that a state law prohibiting sex offenders from living within 300 feet of a school is constitutional. The ACLU filed suit after a Hummel report investigation showed more than a dozen offenders violating that law. That prompted the police to begin evicting them until the ACLU stepped in. The ACLU says it is likely to appeal the ruling, and the police will hold off on eviction proceedings until it is ultimately hashed out in the state Supreme Court. In February, we discovered bureaucratic red tape that was keeping 2 boys from wrestling for their high school team. Well, our story broke the logjam just as the season was ending. Now they're back on the mat, ready for their senior year. Xavier Lopez and Jonas Zhang missed their entire junior year because the Rhode Island Interscholastic League and the Providence School Department said their move to a charter school barred them from wrestling at Hope High School, even though they had done so the previous 2 years. Our story last spring broke the logjam when the league granted them a waiver, and the boys were allowed to wrestle at the state tournament. They have been training since then with the Hope squad and are ready for a full season as seniors this winter. Lopez is a co-captain of this year's team. We've come full circle in Central Falls, where 3 years ago, a Hummel Report interview got the ball rolling on a federal corruption case into the administration of Mayor Charles Moreau. Well, now the former mayor is heading off to prison, and last week, voters elected a new leader. James Diosa, the 28-year-old city councilman who was frozen out during the Moreau administration, got his vindication last week when he won in a landslide over Moreau's former police chief, Joe Moran. Diosa took 66% of the vote. He will be sworn in a month before Moreau learns how long he'll be going to prison on the federal corruption charges that forced him to resign. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. We'll see you back here for more groundbreaking investigations in 2013.